And when things can get so spectacular or fantastic, it's like Harry Potter and the Fantastic Beasts, where like you didn't even expect that would happen, but it did. And that's the whole premise behind Harry Potter, basically, so that there could have been a possibility for these Fantastic Beasts. Daniel Radcliffe, the real actor of Harry Potter, he said on Ellen he saw a shadow coming up behind him, and that's how he was able to not have a person come up and scare him behind him. And more realistically in life, I notice how many times I'm driving and then like I get out to my car to get outside of my car and someone could hit me and kill me if they were like an alien, but luckily we're all human. But like some humans are doing alien stuff like passing out behind the wheel, and now you're a ticking time bomb. But then if you're not a ticking time bomb, you can be a kamikaze, like, and actually try and plow people over, and then that makes the news pretty quickly. And so I'm just thinking how lucky I am that I never have seen that. Just as I want to be lucky not to know that Harry Potter could happen in Voldemort, where you're not able to say a name. Okay, so because people found out that there was mutants, X-Men started and the aliens came. The strongest alien was the Silver Surfer, and he was like Superman. So technically, if there was only one of them in the whole universe, he would be able to take out anyone other than him. And so the ones that were like him, he must have already taken them out. And the only other character like that would basically just be like an angel. And that's why that they don't get taken out, is because they're like invincible. And so that's actually why they had to get sent out from the eternity, because you can't be invincible and in eternity doing the wrong thing. Because they couldn't be destroyed, they had to be sent out. But that's more reason why the Silver Surfer, there would only be one of him, because he would destroy any other things like him that wasn't invincible. You litter. There was people putting cigarettes on the ground, and then I saw a newspaper where a different lady. I saw a newspaper where there was in the trash can, and I actually put dead moths. They were in a cloth, and I was sweeping. It's always when I'm swiping, I'm hitting animals that are dead. So in the Nutcracker, there's a prince, and he walks backwards, and then he accidentally steps on like a nut, and he dies. And he ends up becoming the Nutcracker. So this inanimate object comes to life and drags the little girl into the wind. But the whole reason why that happened was just because they didn't say if the prince was like on Earth or if it was in like an alien planet, and he did this. But lo and behold, ends up in a Nutcracker in Drosselmeyer. That's why he was able to tell the story at the party, the Christmas party. I can't throw all of him in there. I can't throw all of it in it, but I surely would get some of it. I got part of his abdomen, but his head, that would have been more important. And why I want to get rid of his head was because in movies where there's zombies, their head comes off and they don't have any pain. The filter, excuse me, of the grass, all of this together is how many exoskeletons of a mummy, if its exoskeleton was the size of a... So in order to not do that, you have to invent something better and build. And so you have to know how many bad things could have happened currently with whatever just happened. And then you need to like brush it down. Like snow can be dirt. If it's light grained, it'll just be a temperature difference. And the rocks are like really hard ice. And snow compressed down turns into ice. And then the reason is that they're saying there's nothing better, so they have to take the lead. And so they'll justify it with all the new bells and whistles that if you work for them, you're doing this in the right thing because their way is better than the current condition, which is correct. But if they're using it poorly, morally, in order to suppress, in order to achieve invincibility or eternity, then that is no different than the devil in hell. And hell frees over is when people are able to do that. There are two things in a story that don't make sense. One is infinity and the other is invincibility. Whenever the bad guys try to achieve infinity or invincibility, the bad guys always cannot do that because that's not what that's not what actually can occur in order for them to actually achieve it. And so they always have to do it by suppressing its opponent. Human and its protective equipment was nothing other than its bandages and its wraps. What if all the algae behind me was the equivalent to being pressurized to be an exoskeleton of a mummy, except instead of its wraps, it's this green algae. That's what a demon serpent inside the water would be, like a dragon. But if it was in a human form, it would be just a snake with the exoskeleton being the scales of all this algae behind me. That would be what the mummy is to it. The mummy would be the exoskeleton equivalent of a beetle, but in a person size, because the mummies are like wraiths. A wraith can come alive and materialize out of shadow. It's like shadow flesh, and so it's always black because that's what a shadow is. But this would be a green reptile scale behind it. So how many mummies, their bandages would be equal to the amount of algae in here, because if you put algae together, it can make hemp rope or something. So all this algae behind me, how many of it would make up an amount of, and human skin, that's leather. That's why Leatherface, if he got his way, he would have everyone, a whole army of his own, and they'd all be wearing skin for some reason, staying alive. And so everyone would have skin boots and stuff like that. When he puts on his mask, it's all skin. So that's what everyone would be doing if he ruled Earthrealm. But in Mortal Kombat, he's not even allowed in tournaments. If you get a beetle that is the size of a bee and it stretches its exoskeleton skin out, it would be the equal amount of this tobacco bag going inside of this cigarette filter. This is what a cigarette filter with a chewing tobacco filter looks like, and it's actually hidden under it, so you would think it's just the tobacco packed really tightly. But pounds per square inch, the difference between the cardboard of this in here and the tobacco filter cloth is equivalent to a beetle having its exoskeleton dried out. And that's what they were doing with mummies when they were mummifying people. They got silly putty to be on the bandages that they were wrapping them in, and that silly putty turned to glue, and so it was kind of like clay if you take the mummy wraps and the super glue they were putting on the wraps is like an exoskeleton if that was a body humanoid. And so a mummy, that would be that exoskeleton but fleshed out with muscles under it so it could walk around. That's what a mummy would be, with an exoskeleton like a beetle but it would just be a human because its wraps around its body is its protective exoskeleton. Stan.